Hello, my friends. This is Wolfgang with Tools for Ascension, and today, we are here with Kirstie and Lauren.
Hello, everyone.
And we will be, talking, kind of drilling her high self, with questions about, higher dimensions, the stuff beyond space and time. And she calls it scopes. And I have to find out what that is. Probably has nothing to do with sniping. And yeah, let's just, and also we will be having a guided meditation, as we will be clearing ourselves. And I'm pretty sure we have some stuff, whatever is stuck there in multidimensionality. This is ground that probably very few people have, covered before. So we will use this, to clear ourselves, see where we are, Kirstie and me, and then also invite you to participate, basically piggyback with your own intent, just smile, project love, breathe deeply, which will give you potency. Very important, for manifestation, love. And lots of chi, which comes with breath also, so deep breathing and smiling. All right, let's do our most important invocation here. And so we ask that everything that happens here today, from this guided meditation and podcast is going to be for our highest good and is also in divine harmony with the most benevolent outcomes. So just agree. All right, so Kirstie's high self, are we there ready to speak? We didn't do much ceremony at all. We just, starting cold here. So let's see how that goes. What can you tell us about, higher dimension? That above of what we consider 3D, which is actually 4D, which is the dimension of time. But so, what's beyond? What do you want to tell us what we don't know already?
So, multidimensionality is many, 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 many layers. Many layers that most people cannot see. And when you go above the 5th dimension, the 6th dimension to the 12th dimension, there are millions of in-between realms there. And what is recommended is to do a little dive into each of the layers of what's called 5D, 6D, 7D, 8D, 9D, 10D, 11D, 12D. Because most people get caught up in reaching this place called 5D, but what that really is kind of like a place that, if you think of open source software on a computer, that would be like 5D, because it's convoluted, very convoluted. And when one side is programming it, then the other side is programming it. And it's best to go through and up to higher dimensions, as for what you're thinking, for thought. So that's one aspect. The other is scope, and scope is essentially like a big clearing. Think of Ghostbusters, the movie, and going and clearing like New York City in one shebang. So that is essentially what scope is doing, in a very short duration. It's very efficient.
Yeah, I like clearing. The Hindus say, a Brahmana should never give up purification and austerity and renunciation. So purification is definitely part of it. So I think the Ra model of the dimension is pretty good. Ra from the law of one. And yeah, and as you said, sub-dimensions, there's tons of them. And so I don't even try to count them anymore. I mean, yeah, there are people discussing, well, there are actually 13 dimensions, and then, or maybe somebody else, no, there are 15 dimensions. And so, I mean, I just see it, it goes from here to here, and then there is also a realm where there are no dimensions. That's the deepest kind of Hindu teaching, the realm of Vaikuntha, where there's no creation and dissolution at all. Right, so, to cut, to the end of the book, so to say. Okay, so, and, there's a lot of stuff going on the fifth dimension. That's why your guide said, don't even plug into Milky Way galaxy that much, because, it's a war zone. At least on the lower dimensions, right? Even with, I mean, I don't want to preach like Hindu scriptures, but they're also saying, on these dimensions, there is a constant fight, of the suras and the asuras, of the clean ones and the unclean ones. It's constantly going on. It's part of creation. That's the realm, of that. So, and I assume, that we all have stuff there. On these different levels. And so let's just go through the dimensions, very practical. You explain, and then we go, see what kind of stuff is there, that can be liberated. Then we see how we are scoring and give the audience a chance to participate. And then if you feel lighter or start crying suddenly, or bibbering, yeah, you probably had stuff there, which will be clearing. Right? Okay, let's go. So how about anything about the fourth dimension? The ethers or the astral plane. Is this part of dimension, or are we starting in 5D?
The astral plane is its own separate area. The fifth dimension is a good place to start, and yeah, so let's start in the fifth dimension. The fifth dimension is like a foggy day. You can think of it as like pea soup, and attention needs to be paid into this in this dimension, because it is becoming almost like a negative construct. So it is something that needs deep shadow work and cord clearing regularly if hanging out in the fifth dimension. But if you surpass, and all it is to surpass is to think like you're going in an elevator and go up another floor, because these are just words, and the words are prickly.
So when you go into the fifth dimension, you have this prickly feeling?
The prickly feeling is the collective consciousness that is the fifth dimension.
Oh, and you talked about, just before, we did this podcast here, about when you go into sleep, you have this prickly feeling. Ask your high self whether this is just going into the fifth dimension and this is the symptoms.
It is going into the fifth dimension, and these are the symptoms.
Okay, your question is answered here right now. Okay. Yeah. So, now, okay, let's just quantify here a little bit. So there's definitely a lot of stuff going on in the astral plane. Most of the healing work I have to do is astral plane, ghosts, curses, spells, lower thought forms. And so then, and of course, we have the convoluted space of the fifth dimension and other dimensions above there, you know. And all these are kind of obstacles. You know, whatever darkness is there or trauma, you can call it, you know, samskara is the Vedic term for that. So, how much of our suffering, let's say, you know, that's very interested here as humans, is stuck, you know, or is in the astral, you know, is stuck there or caused from the astral contamination? How much is from the fifth dimension? How much is from the sixth dimension? Then maybe there is a little bit from the seventh dimension. But could you kind of break it down, you know, where most of the trauma is?
So most of the trauma is in the fourth dimension, with time and space. And the astral is quite about 80% of that. And the fifth dimension is becoming heavier more and more, 20-ish%. The sixth dimension is light and breezy, and as you go up, yeah,
it fizzles out. It fizzles out. You know, that is not an issue anymore. You know, you're just in the play mode more than in the suffering mode. You know, you're on the other side of the duality, you could say. So, good. So we already kind of worked on the astral plane, you know, and that's probably where, for most light workers, the bulk of the work is. Right? Is that correct? But today we will be dealing with kind of 5D, right? So for most people, you know, what kind of stuff is typically stuck there on 5D that holds them back?
If heavier energies reside in the astral mainly, the leaking of the astral in the 5D is occurring. So the heaviness is also seen throughout 5D.
Though there are, you know, leaks into the 5D, this is not part of the original matrix or construct, is that correct? So, how do those leaks happen? You know, is this magic, trauma, you know, or technology? So, how does this?
There is a lot of energies that are like an open source software, putting in their own software and own upgrades for the purpose of self-interest and lower frequency mischief.
So, what kind of beings, you know, would use, you know, these open softwares or programming, you could say, you know, thought forms, machines, yantras probably in Sanskrit, you know, to cause mischief, you know, and to what purpose? You know, for themselves, how it's an advantage for them to leak dark chi into the, you know, higher, finer realities.
The programming of the word matrix has been inverted for quite some time, and it's a false reality that is looping, and these energies have designed it to cause distortion for the purpose of keeping people in a lower frequency so they can consume the energies from these
Mhm.
beings.
They're keeping the cows stupid so they can't beat the barbed wire or the electric wire. That's kind of the concept, it seems.
Mhm.
So let's see, Louis XIV, the Sun King of France, he used fashion. Every day he came with another fancy dress. Yeah. To distract the aristocracy, so they would be involved in fashion, keeping up with the Johnsons, so to say, and keeping them away from his politics, giving him free rein. So what he created, this kind of group mind of, fashion competition, would that be considered a false matrix, for instance?
It is a distraction. Um, it is a subtle false matrix. Subtle.
Okay, so when you call that subtle, and then of course we have the whole culture here, where you have to work from 8, from morning to night. So what are the heavy, the heavy ones, pretty please?
The heavy ones are distortion, cyclical events, mass modifications of climate, um, distortion at every level in society. The veil is thinning, so intuition is strong in some and weak in others. So essentially, it is two separate worlds that are occurring, and the ones who feel know something's off, and the ones who do not are taking it as it is.
Yeah, like our fathers and grandfathers, volunteering, to be sent into the meat grinders of wars. I mean, no offense to any veterans, but there was definitely a certain naivete there, not considering there may be the puppets of the military industrial complex that's making a lot of money off those conflicts. If they would have known this, they might have thought differently. Okay, so I'm sorry if anybody gets offended. But there was a certain naivete there, that what politicians say is true or what's in the news is true. And yeah, I worked in news for a year. I was a cameraman, so I know what's going on. So anyhow, so how can we clear this now? Let's quantify again, before we get into clearing. So, the biggest distortions, on the 5D level for humanity, what would you call the biggest distortion?
The biggest distortion is crim.
Please define or unpack.
Crim is a looping distortion designed by the Alpha Draconians and is assisted by the reptilians, the tall grays, and other names that are not familiar. And they are creating spaces in between the realms to harbor lower frequency codes. And this is causing almost like a mafia type energy to be released on people who are waking up, people who are questioning, people who are starting to think outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like, I mean, essentially it's crimes against humanity. Um, Definitely illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's been it's been affecting people like quicksand, walking in quicksand. So this is just something, again, the more you know, the more you can step into your sovereignty. Um, and the more that you can de-layer things that aren't supposed to be there.
Yeah, you have to know the system kind of to beat the system, so it needs some insight. So, yeah, okay, so we have loopings, that are going on. They're probably also synchronized with, let's say, astrological events, right, with certain energies. Now, give me one example for loopings. I mean, would you call the seasons as a looping, to increase stress on systems? You could also say to force evolution, right? Or is it something else? That there are certain plagues, diseases, or maybe even sunspots. I mean, there always have been cycles. I mean, everywhere are cycles, right? So have they been manipulated, and what are the fake cycles? Could you give us one good example?
So the best example of a loop is time. And the large scale cyclical events, such as the term that you use, global warming, and the cycles of mass media, in terms of planned events. And this can be something such as vaccine related illnesses, just not saying the word. Um, and also certain events that are popping up around the globe, such as catastrophic events that then establish a frequency to create a lower vibrational realm. The word realm is best to describe what people are calling a timeline. So essentially, that realm, they're manipulating to distort and change the frequency of the entire collective, the entire being that we reside on.
Yeah. So the missing link here, what people have to understand, is regarding weather and earthquakes and other things. We have the technology. We have the technology. We are not like a leaf in the wind. Well, there are certain influences there that are larger, that are above our technology, but we have the technology. So how many of the disasters are due to technology and how many are due to natural cycles? Percentage-wise, please.
Natural cycles, 8%. And created events, 92%.
Okay, that is way more than I expected. Now, there is a huge amount of karma involved in this, creating all this suffering. If you believe in the laws of karma, that something is there. So how is this karma worked out by those beings that are ultimately, responsible for that?
These beings have no thought for karma, and the karma is exceptionally high, but there's karma for distortion, and there's karma for manipulation of creation. And these are something that is currently not reciprocal immediately. However, in another life, very high.
Yeah, so they're going to be, incarnating on so-called suffering planets. The Vedas call this hellish planets. According to the Vedic point of view, the earth plane, it's kind of 50-50. You have about equal amount of suffering, equal amount of pleasure. So then you can, descend or ascend from that, into, let's say, heavenly planets like the Pleiadians, or Lyring systems, with higher culture, technology and, spiritual culture, or into more barbaric, realities, where there's a lot of dark chi, you could say, a lot of disruption. So, the suffering also, is a caveat to this. Some of my clients, are, incarnation or expansion of these beings that created these cultural or other changes, that created huge earth changes, that created the money system, that created, other systems of suppression, and they're here incarnated as human, basically eaten the soup that they cooked when they were, on the higher dimensions. And I would say in this time, given a chance to rectify those mistakes. So. Okay, so this is now about clearing. This was a little bit of an overview, but let's get to it, to the meat of the issue, ourselves. Right. So, of all... Okay, so how do we formulate this here? So I'm using your high self like ChatGTP. It's probably more reliable than ChatGTP, I would say. So, okay. You always start with us first, so ladies first. Kirstie, and how much obstacles, of all the obstacles she has, in performing her divine mission, so how much are coming from the fifth dimensions?
100%.
Oh. I can't beat that. So, how is Wolfgang doing that?
80%.
See, 40 years of work. Okay, and so, who are the beings that can clear this kind of stuff for us? What kind of beings can do this, or what kind of request will do this?
Arcturian Council, Lyran Council, Andromedan Council, and the Rainbow Race.
So basically, we are putting in a complaint, and then they say, well, yeah, they're really very loving right now. And they're in higher vibration, so let's listen to them. Is this kind of the mechanism?
They will completely tear up the old blueprint.
Nice. Okay. So another thing about the, let's say, dimension model is from a yogic point of view. The more I extend my crown chakra above the head, the higher I go, up to 6 feet, 2 meters. The more transcendental, until the more higher dimension access you have. Is that correct? Last year, I said.
No.
So what does it do when I'm having the highest chakra activated?
Well, there are 144,000 chakras in the psyche. What that's doing is essentially moving you up a few feet and allowing you to be in a lighter space. But there is distortion that is quite high for most in the areas above the forehead and above. So the best way to go out is through the higher heart chakra. So picturing yourself in a golden sphere and starting in the heart area and imagining this golden sphere going up a few levels to the higher heart chakra. And then from the higher heart chakra, essentially going anywhere you wish.
Okay, people get your heart chakra blazing, right? Smile like an idiot. And pull the love, from the earth into your heart, or from source. Okay, so let's ask, so who was this now that is clearing this? Oh, the council here, yes. Let's ask those councils, pretty please, to clear whatever impediments, are there for our ascension and wholeness, on the 5th day. And also do this, for humanity, at least those that ask for it. And this would be our audience. This is the time where you nod and agree. And again, let's make the caveat, only for the highest good in divine harmony with the most benevolent outcomes. Very important. You're going to do some light language?
Yes. Kiata. Kiata to santo 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 san. Kiaya Kiaya, kiaya, niaya, ku niaya, kuuncha, tuunta, asanta, kiata, ku ki ku picturing the element of fire, so a flame coming up all around you. Nyaya, nyaya, nyaya. Focusing on your crown chakra. Kiaya, 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 nyaya. Koontaya taaya 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 tashu. Kianaya taonta taata 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 shu. Releasing, 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 releasing. Shu. Kia aya. Koyana shuntaya aya. Koyata. Kiyata yata 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 ya. Ko yo 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 shun. Upgrading, 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 upgrading. Shoo. Ku. Shoo. Kiaya. Koya. Shoo. Kia. Shoo. Koya. Koya. Kuyasha, tiyasha, kuyasha. Releasing, 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 releasing. Kurnyaya. Kiyata ta 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 shuntaya. Kuyataya ta'ata ta'ata ta'ata. Releasing, 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 releasing. Visualizing a flame going down all your chakras.
Front and back.
Well.
Yeah, there's another 5 seconds.
Whew. Releasing, 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 releasing. upgrading, 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 upgrading. Upgrading. So you want to think of your own personal 5D room, place, and you have encrypted it. It is no longer open source.
Oh,
There you go.
yeah. Yeah,
That was good.
no, that's me again here, yeah. Ooh,
That's so funny. That was the prickly sensation.
oh.
That was me going through the 5D and not realizing. That's so interesting. That
So,
was big.
so Kirstie and me are on 5D right now by the symptoms.
Um, hmm?
Are Kirstie and me on 5D right now?
Yes.
Any of the 180% of obstacles still there, lingering?
There's 0% with Kirstie and 2% with Wolfgang.
All right. Okay. So, let's say, so tonight I celebrate, with a bottle of cheap rum, you know. And so, of course, as a result, the next day wouldn't be that fun, probably. But then would that affect, the fifth dimensional pollution?
Hmm. It would lower your frequency, but it still is a good place to be because your area
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is is secure.
Okay.
So the 2% is needing to be looked at with a realm. There is a hidden realm.
Uh-huh. And so that's probably something with most people that they have some hidden realm stuff. Is that correct?
Many, yes.
Okay, so for all those that have hidden realm issues still, we asked for clearing for that too. Whoever can do this for the highest good and divine harmony, you're invited now. Amen. Has to be approved by high self though. Amen. Mhm. Maybe there's some light language, Kirstie.
Uyanaya tuk o 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 tuk atka 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 tuk o tuk o tuk atka tika tika shtuk o tuk ran ta 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 torun tuk atka 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 tuk tika 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 shtuk atka rata to shtuk atka 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 tuk 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 shtuk run tuk atka 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 run tu 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 niana ta 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 ya tuk o sint ka ya tika hasataka asataka 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 shtuk run tu tuk atka Kion toron to shototoro to shototoro to shototoro to shototoro nia tatataya to sotokoroto to sotokaratata Kio toron takhataka takaran tatatash takaroto to shotaka. So some of these realms need to be looked at individually, these hidden ones. Many of them have cleared. If you're feeling a tingly sensation in the back of the neck, most likely you need to dive in a little deeper.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot, at the back of the neck and the head, there are the telepathic channels, and a lot of cords, attached there to manipulate us, from higher dimensionals, different races. That's a standard hookup, to make you, a slave, to manipulate your expression and conceptualization, I think, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now, did we cover the fifth dimension here, or is there something you would like to add? Has this been cleared now for most people that are attending here now, or is there something that we have to now or do?
The fifth dimension is clear. The other thing to note about the fifth dimension is it's best to visualize it as your own unique realm and not anybody else's realm. So it is your own personal realm. And you can also think of it like a vibrational state of joy and love and euphoria. So thinking of these and noticing how you're feeling, this is the vibrational state of the realm of the fifth dimension.
This would be kind of very similar to the concept of the inner sanctuary that I have. Like a big bubble, most likely iridescent, filled with all the good stuff. Whether it's gold, source love, or iridescent, perlmutt color, whatever it is. Which is your own sacred space, which extends, kind of at least, this far away from how you go. That you carry around with you. Is it something like this, or is it, a realm that is much larger?
It is essentially the same.
Okay, essentially the same. Yeah. Between all these different disciplines, and perspectives, a lot of it is the same, just different words and concepts. In principle, it comes down to the same. All right. So this is there, and let's ask our spirit guides and high self to maintain this realm. To have guards there, that keep an eye on it, so there are no intrusions or sabotage, or that we cut off, And another thing about these realm, personal space, is it can get covered over with, dark chi like tumbleweed, right? So you have your nice realm here, this huge egg, or even around your property, and everything around is darkness with tumbleweed, dark chi, and so no light comes in. So your space is pure, but no light comes in, so you get starved, from the light. So we asked our spirit guides, to clear the tumbleweeds too, the astral tumbleweeds and any other covering, that will block, off, our divine fifth dimensional bubbles of reality. Any blockades, so to say, any stuffed up portals, through which nourishment would come in, or updates or help. We like to have the dark guardians removed and brought to the highest courts of divine justice, and we like to have the good beings of love and light, replace them. Make sure there's no nefarious activities can be done on this anymore. If the dark ones have a problem with this, and we are invited to take it to the highest courts of divine justice, the highest ones, that are not the ones that are compromised. Amen, amen, amen. Just agree for yourself. Everybody there on realm, feel the shift. That means it worked. There was some stuff going. All right. So in the next little segment, we will be talking about the sixth dimension. Let's say, how long was it? So we say, goodbye now to, the people, of course. If you like what we're doing here, give us comments, give us thumbs up, and recommend it to your friends. And I recommend watching these things several times, to let it sink in. And Kirstie gives sessions and classes, for personal healing. I don't do classes, I give sessions. Our contact information, is below.
I'm also doing a retreat in Thailand in November as well. So that is a place that's very, very special to me. I lived there for a year and a half, and my whole life changed there. So I'm bringing people on a 5-day retreat in Copenhagen in November. So go check it out on my website.
I mean, I lived for 6 years in India. I've been to Nepal, for a long time. I lived, 4 months in Sri Lanka. So it definitely for a Westerner, to go, to the other side of the planet, to see how different, the life is there, is very, very eye-opening. And generally you go back in time. I mean, definitely our Western culture is bleeding over super fast. And so the original cultures will be lost, probably within this generation. So it's, just, take the chance and experience this before it's gone.
There's a very, very high vibrational eighth dimensional vortex in this particular place in Thailand. So it's a place where you can heal and upgrade, and it's just a really amazing place. And the sun hits very differently over there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pious place, with good vibration, and good spiritual technology, not some useless, mumble jumble. That's very important. All right. So, we love you a long time. Namaste.
Namaste.